May 15, 1945, the truck convoy rumbled to a halt beneath a sky bleached white by the Pacific sun, engines coughing into silence as dust settled over the weary figures crammed in the open beds. The women inside shifted uneasily, their kimonos long since traded for threadbare uniforms stained with salt and sweat, their faces etched with the exhaustion of surrender. They had been plucked from islands where cherry blossoms once fell like snow, from signal stations perched on coral cliffs, from hospitals hidden in jungle caves, and now they rode toward an unknown fate in the hands of the enemy they had been taught to despise. Rumors had chased them across the ocean. Tales hissed in the dim light of transport ships, stories of American savagery that painted pictures of torture chambers and mass graves, of women dragged into the night never to return. Some clutched small bundles containing photographs of families left behind in Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Others fingered prayer beads worn smooth by frantic fingers, and nearly all braced for the violation that propaganda had promised as inevitable. The tailgates dropped with a metallic clang, and the women descended slowly, their Geta clogs replaced by ill-fitting boots that pinched at the toes, their hair cropped short against lice, or simply fallen out from malnutrition. One woman, perhaps 26, her eyes sharp beneath brows drawn tight with worry, stepped down first, her posture still holding the rigid discipline of a naval auxiliary. She scanned the horizon, expecting the snarling faces of victors eager for revenge, the crack of whips or the bayonets gleam, but instead she found a landscape of endless fields, golden wheat swaying gently under a breeze that carried no hint of gunpowder. Barbed wire encircled the camp in neat coils, glinting like silver threads in the sunlight, yet there were no watchtowers bristling with machine guns, no guards barking orders in triumphant rage. American soldiers stood at attention, their uniforms crisp despite the heat, their expressions neutral, almost bored, as if processing prisoners were merely another chore in a long day. The silence hung heavy, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle, and the woman felt a chill despite the warmth, for this calm was more unnerving than any scream. She tightened her grip on the small cloth sack that held her few possessions, a faded obi sash, a letter from her mother never delivered, and prepared her soul for the worst. And then it wafted toward her, subtle at first, a thread of aroma weaving through the air like an invisible ribbon, rich and smoky, the unmistakable sizzle of beef on a grill. She halted mid-step, her companions bumping into her from behind, their murmurs fading into stunned quiet. Steak, the word formed in her mind unbidden, a luxury from childhood tales of imperial banquets or the rare treats before the war, tightened its grip on every mouthful. It was impossible here in this place of defeat, where she had last eaten rice balls laced with weeds and fish heads boiled to mush. Her stomach clenched in protest against its own void, remembering the final ration on the transport ship, a handful of moldy biscuits shared among 10, chewed slowly to make the nothingness last. To encounter such a scent now, at the threshold of captivity, was like stumbling upon a garden in the midst of a battlefield, obscene in its abundance. Anger flared within her, hot and immediate, mingled with a shame that burned deeper. For how dare the enemy taunt them with what they could not have back home? The guards motioned them forward with economical gestures, their voices low and matter-of-fact, one even attempting a mangled Japanese phrase, hayaku, hurried but not harsh. The women formed lines instinctively, drilled into obedience by years of military life, each footfall drawing them closer to the source of that intoxicating smell. For some it was torture incarnate. One young nurse from Okinawa pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting nausea born of hunger and revulsion, while another, a radio operator with calloused fingers, whispered curses under her breath, vowing not to be broken by such crude psychological warfare. Yet none could resist drawing the aroma deeper into their lungs, the smoke curling around memories of festivals long past, of fathers grilling yakitori over charcoal in quiet courtyards, of a world before the drums of war drowned out domestic joys. Inside the camp gates, the scene unfolded with a precision that bordered on the surreal. Barracks aligned in perfect rows, their wooden walls freshly painted in utilitarian white, roofs sloped to shed the occasional rain. Bunks awaited with mattresses stuffed firm with straw, blankets folded at the foot like invitations to rest, and beside each stood a basin with clean water, soap that lathered white and fragrant. It was no ryokan, no hot springs retreat, but compared to the foxholes dug into volcanic ash or the bombed-out shelters in Manila, it gleamed with an order that spoke of deliberate care. The 26-year-old whispered to no one in particular, that it resembled the dormitories of her nursing school in Tokyo, though the bitterness in her voice masked a treacherous flicker of relief. She found her assigned bunk, her fingers tracing the rough weave of the blanket, and tried to steel herself against the seduction of comfort. Distrust gnawed at her. This had to be a facade, a honeyed trap before the inevitable sting. When the call came for the evening meal, they were marched to a long hall where the air thickened with heat and promise, the sizzle now a symphony, accompanied by the clatter of utensils on metal trays. Cooks in white aprons, American soldiers with sleeves rolled high, turned thick slabs of beef on massive griddles, the fat spitting and popping in rhythmic defiance. The women filed in, eyes wide, unable to bridge the chasm between their dread and this domestic tableau. Trays were pressed into their hands, not the splintered bowls of captivity lore, but sturdy plates bearing rice, actual white rice, not the brown husks of home, vegetables steamed to tenderness, and atop it all, a portion of steak, seared to a juicy pink, juices pooling like forbidden elixir. The 26-year-old stared at her plate, her hands steady through sheer will, her mind reeling through images of her family in Kyoto, her father lost at Midway, her mother scavenging for roots in the shadow of air raid sirens, her younger sister perhaps among the ghosts of firebombed streets. Here, in the victor's grasp, she was offered meat that kings might envy in these lean times. Defiance surged. She imagined dashing the plate to the floor, spitting in the face of this mockery, proving her spirit unbroken. But her body, traitor that it was, leaned forward, the fork trembling as she cut a piece. The first bite exploded on her tongue, salt, char, tenderness that melted like snow in spring, flooding her with a warmth that bordered on ecstasy, tears pricking her eyes unbidden. She chewed swiftly, almost guiltily, before the moment could shatter, while around her others mirrored the act, some weeping openly, others savoring each morsel as if it were communion. A few pushing the steak aside in silent protest, their pride a fragile shield against surrender. The hall filled with the subdued sounds of eating, forks scraping, breaths hitching, and in the doorway leaned a guard, mid-30s perhaps, his stance relaxed, a faint smile playing as one woman met his gaze, and he nodded slightly, as if to say, "It's only dinner." That nod pierced deeper than any interrogation, hinting at a humanity that propaganda had erased, cracking the foundation of hatred she had clung to like a lifeline. Meal concluded. They returned to barracks under a twilight sky, streaked with orange, the 26-year-old lying on her bunk, the flavor lingering like a ghost on her palate. She felt sated yet unsettled, burdened by the ease of it all, questioning if this was genuine provision or calculated softening. Sleep evaded her, the patrol of boots outside a steady cadence without menace, and as the scent of cooling grills faded into the night, she wondered what other surprises captivity held. Dawn brought the aroma anew, faint but insistent, drawing her from fitful dreams, and she inhaled deeply, knowing the war within had begun. The steak had nourished her body, but it had ignited a fire in her thoughts, challenging the certainties drilled into her since Pearl Harbor. If the enemy fed them thus, what else might prove the lies of the divine empire? The question simmered, hotter than any grill, and breakfast was merely the prelude. The days unfolded in a rhythm that mocked their expectations. Roll call at sunrise with names called in accented Japanese, work details light and purposeful, mending uniforms, tending vegetable patches that promised future harvests, tasks that honored skill rather than degraded. Meals arrived punctually, steak not daily but frequent enough to become a benchmark, accompanied by eggs sunny side up, bread toasted golden, coffee black and bittersweet. The 26-year-old observed the guards closely, noting their youth, their casual camaraderie, the way they smoked cigarettes in clusters, laughing at jokes in a language that sounded like rushing water. Propaganda had depicted Americans as demons with dollar signs for eyes, rapacious invaders who would desecrate shrines and bodies alike. Yet here, no hands strayed, no leers lingered. Respect was given as routine, a policy etched in their very posture. One afternoon, as she weeded rows of carrots under a watchful but distant eye, she overheard two guards discussing baseball scores from a radio broadcast, their voices animated with passion for a game she had never imagined. The normalcy stung, for while they debated strikes and home runs, her homeland lay in ashes, cities vaporized in flashes of unthinkable light, rumors of which had begun to filter even here, though denied in her heart. The abundance grated most sharply in quiet moments. Scraps from the kitchen, fat trimmings and bone ends discarded without thought, would have fed families for days in Tokyo's black markets. She felt the irony like a blade twist. The enemy wasted what her people craved. Laughter erupted unexpectedly one day when a guard attempted to pronounce arigato, mangling it into something comical, and several women chuckled despite themselves, the sound foreign in their throats. Quickly stifled, but leaving a residue of unease. To find humor across the divide felt like treason. Another time, a tray slipped from numb fingers, steak sliding into the dirt, and an American knelt without hesitation, scraping it clean with a knife, handing it back with a shrug. The woman accepted it, flustered, her worldview tilting further. Suspicion persisted, whispered in bunks at night. This is the calm before the storm, the feast before the famine. Some women refused the meat, picking at rice alone, hoarding dried fruits and hidden seams. The 26-year-old ate, rationalizing it as fuel for endurance, but each swallow tasted of conflict, loyalty to the emperor clashing with the undeniable reality of full bellies. Letters home, when permitted, were censored and sparse, omitting the plenty for fear of sounding mad or disloyal. Who back in the ruins would believe that prisoners dined on steak while civilians boiled grass? The Americans seemed unaware of the turmoil they sown, treating the camp as standard procedure, adhering to conventions she had been taught were Western hypocrisies. If they followed rules of war, honored the vanquished with sustenance, then the portrait of barbarism dissolved like mist. And if that dissolved, what of the divine mission, the co-prosperity sphere, the sacrifices demanded in blood? Thoughts of her sister haunted her. Had she perished believing Americans monsters, while here her siblings supped at their table? The guilt hollowed her anew. Nights under steady electric lights, another luxury, brought dreams of home, of sushi counters before shortages, of obon dances under lanterns. Waking to the smell of grilling meat anchored her to this strange present. The steak evolved from shock to symbol, a gauntlet thrown to her indoctrination. Some women hardened, faces set in perpetual scowl, refusing conversation beyond necessity. Others thawed incrementally, nodding thanks for extra portions, their eyes softening. The 26-year-old oscillated, pride warring with pragmatism, each meal a skirmish in the battle for her soul. Evenings often carried the scent across the compound, mingling with potatoes roasted in drippings, and she would pause, inhaling, whispering her sister's name into the dusk. The greatest unkindness was not deprivation, but provision, for it forced confrontation with falsehoods. And as the sun dipped, painting the wire in gold, she sensed the next assault brewing, not physical, but intellectual. The Americans prepared to wield ideas sharper than any katana. Mornings resonated with the bell's toll, but soon another layer intruded, the murmur of instruction, the flip of pages, the hesitant repetition of alien syllables. Rumors swirled of classes, dismissed at first as absurdity. Education in enclosure, yet a hut was repurposed, benches arranged, a blackboard installed bearing English script. Books arrived in crates, titles from Twain to Jefferson, pages crisp or worn but abundant. What steak had started, words would escalate. The 26-year-old entered the makeshift classroom with arms crossed, defenses high, surrounded by women whose expressions mirrored her wariness. The instructor, a sergeant with a patient smile, wrote liberty on the board, underlining it firmly, then encouraged repetition. Phrases stumbled forth. Hello, thank you, peace. Her tongue resisted the soft consonants, yet they flowed easier than expected, lighter than the clipped commands of Bushido. Films followed, projected in the mess hall, screens alive with devastation. Pearl Harbor's wreckage giving way to Bataan, then to camps with skeletal prisoners, Japanese guards in the frame. Gasps echoed, denials muttered. She stared, stomach churning, for these were inversions of the atrocities she had been assured were Allied fabrications. The images lingered, uncommented upon, allowing doubt to fester. Statistics seeped in, hundreds of thousands of Japanese POWs across theaters, many women in administrative roles, camps equipped with libraries, recreation, to women who had seen imperial censors burn volumes. This wealth of print was dizzying. She selected a dog-eared Little Women, its tales of sisters in a distant land stirring unexpected kinship. Lessons varied, writing prompts on pre-war lives, homes with tatami mats, festivals with taiko drums, fathers in suits boarding trains. Her essay, read aloud in halting English, exposed vulnerabilities, yet the listener's nod conveyed respect, not ridicule. Humor surfaced when steak was the vocabulary word. Laughter rippling as memories of that first meal resurfaced, the sergeant joining in good-naturedly. Tension underscored all, each class reshaped thoughts subtly. Guilt accompanied enjoyment, betraying the dead by engaging with the enemy's culture, yet refusal felt like self-imprisonment. Camp newsletters, prisoner-authored under oversight, debated governance, rights, individualism. Ideas once taboo, now probed cracks in loyalty. She greeted guards tentatively in English, browsed shelves lingeringly, hummed snatches of swing from film soundtracks. Fences confined beliefs as much as bodies, each session widening breaches. Pain accompanied revelation. Footage of aid to Okinawan civilians contrasted her people's suffering, amplifying contradictions. The strategy was patient, knowledge the solvent for chains of fanaticism. One twilight, notebook in hand filled with scrawled sentences, she gazed at the wire, pondering the internal shifts. The battle for imagination raged, and liberation loomed not in release, but in rethinking. Months blurred, the gates creak now signaling departure. Women transformed, emerging into a world altered beyond recognition. The 26-year-old clutched her bundle, uniform folded, notebook brimming, a lone volume of poetry, and boarded the repatriation ship, heart ambivalent. Japan awaited in fragments, cities erased, society unraveling. The voyage home revealed scorched earth from decks, islands pockmarked, mainland whispered of in horrified tones. Disembarking into Yokohama's chaos, crowds of emaciated figures, children with stick limbs, she felt the camp's order as a phantom limb. Her village near Nagasaki was vaporized, survivors speaking of a son born on Earth, shadows etched eternal. Family gone, sister vapor, parents ash, news delivered bluntly amid rubble. She wandered ruins, the memory of steak rising mockingly as she queued for seaweed soup. Relatives housed her warily, noting her filled-out form, questioning trades made for survival. Streets buzzed with accusations of collaboration. Returnees shunned as tainted, nights brought insomnia, camp bells echoing in mind against home's silence. Aid trucks bore American marks, cans of beef distributed, relatives consuming gratefully while she choked on irony. Writing resumed in secret, English phrases capturing camp contradictions, questioning empire's myths. Discovery by kin sparked confrontation. Why honor their tongue? But she persisted. Language a bridge to unseen horizons. Captivity endured internally, memories clashing with reality, loyalty frayed by experience. Stake symbolized possibility amid destruction, gift and indictment. In ruined streets, she penned, "I endure." The phrase anchored her. Survival sparked new conflict. Memory versus rebirth, guilt yielding to tentative hope. As dusk fell over devastation, the sizzle's echo persisted, urging reconstruction of self and nation from ashes. The war's end birthed the true struggle for understanding, reconciliation, a future scripted in openness. She walked onward, notebook clutched, steps resolute amid hunger's chorus. The aroma whispered of humanity's complexity, unsettling yet illuminating. And in its wake she glimpsed rebuilding not just cities, but souls. The pattern repeated in subtler ways as seasons turned within the wire. Autumn leaves drifting from distant trees to carpet the compound in gold and crimson, a beauty that mocked their confinement yet softened the edges of despair. Meals evolved with the calendar, steak yielding occasionally to chicken or pork, but always substantial, always prompting that initial wave of disbelief, now tempered by routine. The 26-year-old, whom we shall call Akiko, for the clarity of her journey, though names were stripped in captivity, found herself anticipating the mess hall, not with dread but a complicated eagerness. Her body adapted to nourishment while her mind rebelled against the gratitude it implied. Conversations in bunks grew bolder, women sharing fragments of pre-war lives. Akiko spoke of her training as a telegraphist in Osaka, the click of keys under fingertips, the pride in serving the empire, only to have another recount hospital tents in Saipan, amputations by lantern light, the screams that haunted dreams. These exchanges wove a tapestry of shared humanity, eroding the isolation propaganda had enforced. Guards became individuals, the sergeant with a limp from Guadalcanal, the cook who hummed blues tunes while flipping meat, their stories overheard in snippets building a mosaic contrary to demonization. One guard, Tom from Iowa, slipped her an extra apple during inspection, his whisper for strength, in broken Japanese lingering as a kindness she dissected for hours. Was it pity, manipulation, or genuine empathy? The ambiguity fueled introspection. Classes intensified, grammar yielding to literature, Shakespeare's sonnets recited haltingly, their themes of love and loss transcending tongues. Akiko grappled with to be or not to be, the question mirroring her existential rift. To cling to old allegiances or embrace new vistas? Debates sparked in supervised forums, democracy versus imperial divinity, voices rising then falling into thoughtful silence. Films progressed from horror to hope, showing American farms bountiful, cities thriving, a narrative of opportunity that clashed with tales of capitalist exploitation. Doubt deepened. If America prospered without an emperor, what did that imply for Japan's path? Physical changes manifested, cheeks rounded, eyes brighter, strength returning for volleyball games organized on dusty fields, laughter ringing genuine if guarded. Akiko scored a point once, the ball arcing high, and Tom's applause from the sideline felt like a bridge momentarily spanned. Romances whispered of, fleeting glances, but rules held firm, preventing scandal yet allowing imagination to flirt with forbidden. Winter blanketed the camp in frost, heaters humming in barracks, cocoa served hot, a novelty that evoked childhood New Year's mochi, but richer, creamier. Akiko wrote letters now fluent in English, though mailed versions censored to blandness. Her private journal, a torrent of conflict. The stakes sustains, but the words devour. Spring brought cherry trees planted along the fence by prisoners, blossoms ironic in bloom, petals falling like surrender flags. Graduation of sorts occurred, certificates for language proficiency, Akiko's hand shaking as she accepted hers, the paper a ticket to unknown futures. Release rumors circulated, hearts pounding with mixed terror and longing. The day arrived unceremoniously, bundles packed, goodbyes awkward, Tom's handshake firm, eyes saying more than words. The truck ride to the port reversed the arrival, fields giving way to ocean, stakes memory the constant companion. Aboard the repatriation vessel, women clustered, sharing camp tales that sounded fantastical. Abundance, education, respect. Japan loomed shattered, Hiroshima and Nagasaki myths until seen. Craters, shadows, survivors with keloid scars telling of light brighter than 1,000 suns. Akiko's quest for kin ended in registries of the dead, her solitude profound. Settling in temporary shelters, she taught English to orphans, their eager faces echoing her classroom. Steak funded by aid packages becoming communal feasts. Accusations faded as survival demanded pragmatism, her camp-honed skills employable in reconstruction. Years later, in a rebuilt Tokyo, Akiko married a former POW, their children bilingual, dinner tables featuring hybrid meals, teriyaki steak, a fusion born of experience. The smell still surprised in memory, a pivot from hate to understanding, the true liberation. Her notebook, yellowed but preserved, ended with, "From barbed wire to open skies, the battle won, not by force, but by the sizzle of possibility." And in quiet moments, inhaling grill smoke from street vendors, she smiled. The war's longest shadow dispelled by the light of a single, surprising scent. But the story delves deeper into the nuances of those camp days. For transformation was no linear path, but a labyrinth of setbacks and epiphanies. Early on, a typhoon warning confined them to barracks, winds howling like dive bombers, rain lashing roofs, and in the dim light, fears resurfaced. Guards would abandon them, or worse, use the chaos for atrocities. Yet Americans distributed blankets, hot soup with chunks of beef, their calm reassuring. Akiko huddled with Miko, a fellow auxiliary from Kyushu, confessing nightmares of kamikaze brothers, Miko revealing her own loss of a fiancé at Iwo Jima. Bonds formed in vulnerability, propaganda's walls crumbling brick by brick. Post-storm, cleanup revealed guards laboring alongside, mending fences, no distinction in mud. Akiko's shovel blistered hands unused to toil, but completion brought pride, a shared nod from a sergeant acknowledging effort. Meals that night featured steak rare, blood warm, evoking ancestral feasts, tears mixed with juices. Classes incorporated history, American Revolution dissected, parallels to samurai rebellions drawn hesitantly. Akiko argued in essay form the divinity of emperors, but research uncovered, and the instructor's gentle counter with documents, planted seeds of secular governance. Art sessions allowed painting. Akiko's canvas depicting camp from above. Wire a frame around unexpected harmony. The work displayed anonymously, but praised. Music nights introduced jazz, saxophones wailing freedom, feet tapping involuntarily, bodies swaying to rhythms forbidden at home. A dance impromptu erupted, guards joining circumspectly, Akiko twirling with Tom, the world spinning in joy untainted by ideology. Reprimands followed for propriety, but the memory glowed. Health improved dramatically. Clinic visits for vitamins, dental care pulling rotten teeth painlessly, bodies mending as minds expanded. Akiko's period returned after months absent, a sign of vitality, whispered celebrations among women. Holidays marked uniquely, Thanksgiving with turkey substituting steak, explanations of gratitude prompting reflections on Bushido's honor versus forgiveness. Christmas carols sung, gifts of socks or candy, Akiko receiving a scarf knitted by a guard's wife back home. The gesture overwhelming. New Year's brought mochi pounded in camp, fusion of cultures, toasts and sake smuggled or simulated. Spring festivals improvised with hanami, under those planted trees, poems composed in haiku form about captivity's ironies. Intellectual pursuits deepened, book clubs discussing democracy in America, Akiko defending, then questioning collectivism. Debates with visiting chaplains on Shinto versus Christianity, souls searched without conversion pressure. Physical education included baseball, Akiko catching fly balls, the crack of bat a new symphony. Injuries treated with care, a sprained ankle elevated, ice applied, concern genuine. Romantic tensions simmered but resolved in friendships. Letters exchanged post-release in some cases. Psychological shifts evident in dreams. Less of burning cities, more of open fields. Journal entries evolved from rage to curiosity. Why did they give when they could take? Answers emerged in lessons on Geneva Conventions, humanity's laws binding victors too. Final months brought preparation for reintegration. Resumes crafted, skills inventoried, typing, nursing, languages. Farewells emotional, embraces chaste but heartfelt, promises to write. The gates opening, a rebirth, world vast and daunting. Repatriation's hardships contrasted sharply. Black markets, Yakuza rule, occupation forces benevolent yet authoritative. Akiko navigated with camp resilience, securing interpreter work, voice bridging divides, marriages to GIs rare but occurring. Akiko choosing a Japanese engineer, their home a blend. Children learned of grandmother's camp, not as shame, but strength. In old age, Akiko visited the former site, now a park. Grill smells from picnickers evoking smiles. The steak surprise had been the catalyst, unraveling fanaticism, weaving new tapestries of peace. Her life a testament, from POW to pioneer of understanding, the scent eternal in memory's kitchen. To expand further on the individual arcs within the collective, consider Hana, the nurse who initially refused meat, her defiance rooted in a brother's suicide mission. Honor demanding starvation over enemy sustenance. Weeks passed, body weakening, fainting during roll call, until a doctor, American, compassionate, explained malnutrition's toll, not as command but concern. Hana relented one night, biting into steak with sobs, the act of funeral for her old self. Rehabilitation followed, her skills utilized in camp infirmary, saving a guard's appendicitis, gratitude mutual. Post-release, she founded clinics in devastated areas, American aid integrated seamlessly, or Yumi, the radio operator, whose laughter at mangled Japanese broke ice. Her wit a weapon turned to diplomacy. She organized talent shows, skits parodying camp life, tension diffused in mirth. Later in Japan, she broadcast reconciliation programs, Voice a Bridge. Akiko's path intersected theirs in profound ways. Study groups with Hana delving medical texts, performances with Yumi scripting English-Japanese plays. Collective experiences amplified personal growth. Seasonal cycles marked progress. Summer heat waves cooled with lemonade, another shock of sweetness. Fall harvest from gardens, yielding tomatoes juicy, shared equitably. Winter snowballs, fights with guards, barriers dissolved in play. Spring plantings symbolic of renewal. Intellectual milestones, first full English conversation, debate won on merits, poem published in camp paper. Emotional peaks, anniversary of surrender observed in silence, then discussion, grief processed communally. Lows too, news of atomic bombs via Red Cross, denial then acceptance, mourning national and personal, support groups formed, tears shared, healing begun. The program's genius lay in normalcy's subversion, treating prisoners as humans capable of change, not incorrigibles. Akiko realized this during a lecture on constitutional monarchy. Parallels to Japan's future hinted. Release processed in waves. Akiko and later, allowing mentorship of newcomers. Her poise inspiring. Final night, steak feast farewell, toasts to futures unknown. Shipboard, reflections solidified. Captivity had been crucible, forging empathy from enmity. Homecoming's bitterness, scorn, starvation, tempered by inner fortitude. Akiko volunteering with occupation forces, not as collaborator, but healer. Career in translation, books on experience, authored anonymously at first, then boldly. Family raised with stories balanced, honor the past, learn from it. Grandchildren visiting U.S., no animosity, cycle broken. The smell of steak in American barbecues evoking nostalgia, not pain. Surprise evolved to gratitude. Akiko's legacy, proof that kindness, sustained, disarms deeper than bombs, ideas the ultimate victors in war's aftermath. Delving into the sensory tapestry that defined those days, the sizzle of steak was but the overture to a symphony of scents, sights, sounds that assaulted and reshaped sensibilities. Morning reveille accompanied by coffee's bitter roast, a far cry from green tea's subtlety, waking senses sharply. Bread baking filled afternoons with yeasty warmth, crusts crackling under knives. Vegetable soups simmering with herbs unfamiliar. Rosemary, thyme introducing palates to new worlds. Visuals assaulted, flags, stars and stripes flying proud, yet not rubbed in faces. Posters of Roosevelt then Truman, explained in classes, as leaders elected, not divine. Sounds layered, swing music from phonographs, baseball commentary crackling on radios, laughter in mess lines. Touch soap slick and foaming, scrubbing away grime of battles past. Mattresses yielding softly, sleep deep and restorative. Taste explosions beyond steak pies with flaky crusts. Ice cream on hot days scooped generously. Fruits canned but sweet, all conspired to normalize the abnormal, making captivity a bizarre idyll amid global ruin. Akiko cataloged in journal, senses betrayed first, mind followed reluctantly. Interactions humanized, guard sharing family photo, wife and kids smiling, prisoner reciprocating with origami crane. Exchanges built trust incrementally. Conflicts arose. Attempted escape foiled gently. Perpetrators counseled not punished harshly. Ideological holdouts isolated by choice, their fervor fading against evidence. Conversions quiet, no dramatics, just gradual awakening. Akiko's pivotal moment, dreaming in English, waking startled, realizing submersion complete. Post-camp, sensory memories triggered flashbacks, positive barbecue smoke, bringing camp camaraderie to mind. Integration into society leveraged these. Akiko consulting on cultural exchange programs. Her narrative expanded in memoir, detailed the olfactory journey from shock to acceptance, staked the metaphor for broader digestion of defeat and rebirth. Influence rippled, students inspired to study abroad, fostering alliances. In twilight years, Akiko reflected, the surprise was not the steak, but the humanity serving it, platter of possibility changing history one bite at a time. The administrative precision of the camp deserved its own chronicle, for it was the scaffolding upon which transformation hung. Intake processed with efficiency, delousing showers hot and private, uniforms issued clean if plain, medical exams thorough but respectful, vaccinations administered with explanations. Assignments based on skills, Akiko to clerical, transcribing records in dual languages, her accuracy praised. Pay and script for canteen, chocolates, stationery, introducing economics of choice. Mail system reliable, letters from home trickling, though censored, connections to outside sustaining sanity. Library rotation weekly, books signed out, discussions encouraged. Recreation scheduled, movies weekly, sports daily, holidays observed. Discipline firm but fair, infractions like hoarding punished with extra duties not corporal, appeals process existed, grievances heard. This structure mirrored society functional, contrasting chaos of wartime Japan. Akiko noted, order without oppression, a revelation. Leadership among prisoners emerged. Councils elected, interfacing with administration, self-governance practiced. Preparatory courses for release, job training, civics, psychology of adjustment, all built resilience for return. Akiko's role in council advocated for more Japanese texts, request granted, balance achieved. The system's success, low incidence, high rehabilitation rates per American metrics. Long-term, many POWs contributed to Japan's democracy. Camp experienced the unspoken foundation. Akiko in politics briefly, advocating women's rights, voice honed in debates behind wire. The stake embedded in this machine of mercy fueled bodies for minds to engage. Surprise compounded by sustainability, abundance not fleeting but policy. Ultimate lesson, victory in generosity, defeating spirits by uplifting them. Personal relationships wove the finest threads in this tapestry of change. Akiko's friendship with Sergeant Tom deepened platonically. Conversations through fence during walks, topics from farming to philosophy. He taught slang, she-hazums of honor, parting gift, dictionary, inscribed to new beginnings, post-war correspondence, his letters describing Iowa harvests, hers Tokyo's rebuild. Meeting decades later in peace conference, embrace of old friends. Similar stories abounded. Romances consummated post-release, marriages enduring, mentorships turning to partnerships in business. Camp is unlikely matchmaker of minds. Akiko's marriage to Ken met through aid work, their bond strengthened by shared understanding of occupation nuances. Children bilingual, bicultural, embodiment of reconciliation. The human element, personified in smells of cooking, sounds of shared laughter, sights of helping hands, dissolved enmity, steak the icebreaker, conversation the glue. In essence, the camp a microcosm of possible peace. Scaled up in Marshall Plan, alliances formed. Akiko's life arc from surprised POW to ambassador of amity, the sizzle echoing through generations. To reach the depths of emotional turbulence, consider the nights when doubt crested like waves. Akiko pacing barracks, whispering arguments with absent propagandists, defending empire then crumbling under logic. Tears for fallen comrades who died believing lies, while she lived in comfort. Guilt over survivors plenty, imagining families' starvation. Therapy informal in group talks, catharsis in writing. Breakthrough, realizing loyalty to truth over regime, honor in adaptation. Similar crises for others, suicide attempts prevented by watchful guards, interventions compassionate. Recovery through work, study, community. Akiko counseling a despondent peer, words from classes. Freedom begins in mind, the process therapeutic. Camp accidental sanatorium for warped souls. Outcome, women emerging stronger, resilient, contributors to New Japan. Steak nourished the vessel for this healing. Cultural clashes and fusions provided color. American holidays explained. Participated in, Japanese traditions requested. Allowed tea ceremonies with rationed leaves. Folk songs sung. Hybrid events. Baseball with sumo demonstrations. Food fusions. Steak with soy, rice balls with cheese. Language mix, Japlish pidgin evolving to fluency. Art exchanges, calligraphy for soldiers, their doodles in return. All enriched, broadened horizons. Akiko's palate expanded, cooking post-war blending styles. Family recipes innovated. Cultural ambassador in essence. The repatriation journey itself a saga. Ships crowded but fed well. Steak on board. Lectures on arrival expectations. Psychological prep. Docking to jeers then aid. Adjustment harsh. Akiko's first job. Translating for trials. Facing former superiors. Justice tempered mercy. Forgiveness hard won, but practiced. Life unfolded in layers of meaning. Camp the core.